Welcome, welcome. Today we're going to show you a cute, quick little top called the Ruffled Wrap. And I'm going to start first with the inspiration. This little picture as to where I got it from. I just looked at this and I thought, oh my gosh, that's just way too cute. Florals are so popular. Floral prints are really popular, both woven and knit. You could do this top in a woven or a knit. It would not matter. The fabric, the pattern itself, I used 4019. It's actually for a woven. So you could do this in a woven. I just had these great prints come in that were in knits, and I decided that's just what I wanted to do. I wanted to do it out of a knit. So the only difference is the body, I went down a little bit in size, and then I used my knit sleeve as opposed to my woven sleeve. And my woven armhole, I used my knit armhole over the woven armhole, and I'll show you how to do that. All right, so first off, we're going to look at kind of some really close proportions because I love the sleeve. I just love the sleeve, and that's kind of what sold me because it's really just a wrap with a different sleeve, but I just really liked it. So I want you to look at this next photo. And what I did is, and I've shown you kind of this before, but this was a great example to kind of go through it again. Whenever you have a photo of something and you say, okay, I want it to look like that, but on me, you measure the distances, measure the physical picture, and then measure you. So for instance, if you notice, I measured from the top of the sleeve, the cap, to the bottom of the sleeve. It's a 3/4 sleeve, and that was 2 inches. And then I took my sleeve, my knit sleeve, and measured from the cap, minus your seam allowance, to the bottom, and that was 18 inches. So I knew that everything on me was going to be 9 times the size of what it was in the photo. And once I had that scale and proportion going, I could go to town. So if you notice, I measured the little ruffle, and that little ruffle is 1/2 inch in width. So I timed that times the 9, and I got 4.5 inches. I added seam allowance on both sides, and I ended up with 5.25 inches, how each of those are wide. So I knew I wanted 2 ruffles, 5.25 wide because I had 2 seam allowances, and I knew that I wanted one at the bottom of this sleeve. The total wanted to be 18 inches. So I took away another 5.5 inches. And then the first ruffle I just sewed right to the bottom of the sleeve. And the second ruffle I went up and sewed that. I'll show you that in a minute. But that's how you start to get the ruffle patterns, the width. So the first ruffle, you just make a rectangle. And before we go to that, I want to show you this same picture here, where the tie is also 2 inches. So I knew that that tie would hang down, again, the two inches times the 9, because everything's 9 times bigger, is the 18 inches. And so I knew how long to make the tie. I wanted a bow, so I made the bow and then added those 9 inches, and you kind of can figure out how long to do that. Mine was 27 inches. A bow takes up, just so you know, about 9 inches when you're making the bow, 4.5 inches each way. So I added the 18 that it was hanging down plus the 9 to make the bow itself, and I made mine 27 inches. I made it 4 inches wide is how wide I cut the strip, so that when you fold that in half and do seam allowance and everything, you've got it about 2 inches in width. All right, so I cut my pieces just as is. I'm going to show you one other change I made to the pattern. I did my ruffles, and then I did my ties. Okay, you do 2 front facings, just like in the pattern. And then I'm going to wait to sew that. First, let's talk about cutting. And then the only thing I did also is I folded back my lapel. I did not want a collar, and I just cut that off. And you can use your French curve. The inches don't make a difference. Notice mine is just on the concave part of the curve as opposed to the convex, so it just covers up a little more of my neck than having it open. If you want it more open, you just flip the French curve the other way and scoop out as opposed to scooping in. Either way, it looks like a V-neck, so you can use either side of the curve, and it's just fun. It's just fun to do that styling. Okay, so then the other thing I did is, because I'm eliminating the collar, I added a back facing. And when you're adding that back facing, you're just going to trace the back neck edge and then make it the same width as the shoulder width on the front. All right, so I've got those pieces. I've got my front facing, my side front, my back, my side back. I've got my sleeve, my 2 ruffles, my ties, and then I've got a back facing. All right, so now I'm going to go to making the ruffle still, because that's where I was. All right, so you see this rectangle, and that rectangle equals the width, and it's just a rectangle. That's number one, that's the bottom one. And then the width up here, where you're going to put the next one, which is, remember the cuff is 4.5 inches wide, so I went up about 4 inches, and I did the next one, okay? And then I made that rectangle. Now notice this one's going to be a little wider to start than what this one is. So the top ruffle is going to be a little wider. For instance, the top ruffle was 12 inches at the top, whereas the bottom ruffle was only 10 inches. And that's simply because the sleeve is angled as it goes down. Now the fullness I decided on was 1 to 1.5. You can look at mine and say, no, I want a little more ruffle than that. And you can go 1 to 2. This is 1 to 1.5, which means I'm going to spread that bottom width 1 and 1.5 times the top. So that's what this next photo is showing you. I took that bottom ruffle, and that was 12 inches at the top, and I spread it to 18 inches at the bottom. That's 12, 1, 1.5, half of 12 is 6. You get 18. So that bottom spread is going to be 18 inches, and you're going to make slashes like that. This is fun. This is kind of fun pattern making. And then just do 12 inches at the bottom. Whenever you see a ruffle pattern, it's almost always 1 to 1.5, and you can always make ruffles. Just know the width that they are, which is why I showed you how to measure the photo, because you can do that on any photo. You can look at the photo, measure it, measure you, get a relationship between the two. I'm 9 times bigger than what she is in this photo. And then I can go to town and have all kinds of fun. And then this top ruffle is 10 inches, and I opened it and spread it to 15. Again, 1 and 1.5. So 10, half of that is 5. 1 to 1.5 is equal to 15. And I spread that, and I cut 2 of those. So then what I did, we're going to go to the sewing now. I'm all ready to, oh, there's one other thing I did in cutting out, and that is this next photo you're going to see. You want to put, I used my knit sleeve and my knit armhole on the woven body, because the body itself doesn't matter. I went down in size so that it would give me the, the fit that I want. But as far as anything else, knit or woven won't make any difference. Where it makes a difference is the armhole and the sleeve. So I came in and I used my templates, and I found my knit front and my knit back. And if you look at this photo, it shows you placement of the front, and you can see that I'm placing my knit armhole right at the edge of the armhole at the shoulder, and then you swing it to the side seam, and notice that it comes above the woven armhole, and so you just continue the side seam straight up. And then you do the same thing in this next photo. You do the same thing in the back. You can see I'm putting the knit armhole on the edge of the woven, and then swinging it out to the side seam, and you'll notice it comes up higher. And so that's where you cut, and then you just go straight down the side seam. And most of you know this, and most of you have done it. We just have a lot of new viewers, and they don't understand the templates or necessarily how to use them. But we do have a video on armhole templates and how you can use them, and they're just fun and easy. And they're very simple to switch and do around, and it's kind of a lot of fun. Okay, now we're going to go to the sewing. I've changed my pieces. I've got my pieces. My fabric that I'm using is 4213. I didn't use any more yardage. You don't need any more. These little ruffles just don't take up that much space, especially if you're doing 3/4. A normal sleeve would take up just as much, so I didn't allow any more additional fabric, and I was just fine. All right, so my fabric, again, it's a cotton knit. It's got a little bit of poly, but I love it. I mean, I just love it. So, but we've got a whole bunch to choose from. If you don't like this one, find one you like. They're just all really fun and amazing. Okay, so 4213, and again, my pattern is 4019. You could also use 650, the wrap top. I used 4019 because it was taking off an even amount at the bottom. I didn't want the bottom to be a shirt tail hem, which is what the 650 is. And so it doesn't matter. Whichever one you have, one is just as easy as another. If your tendency is to wear more dresses, I'd go to the 4019. If you wear more tops, I'd go to the 650. They're both wrap tops. They both have collars. They're both, really great tried and true patterns that are just wonderful. Okay, so now let's sew. We're going to sew the front to the side, the back to the side back. I'm going to sew the shoulder seams together, and I'm going to sew the front facing because I've cut 4 of these. I've cut 4. So 2 are for the front and then 2 for the front facing. So I've cut the front facing. The front is sewn to the side front, and then the front facing is sewn to the back facing. All right, and then I'm just literally going to sew all the way around the facing. And then when I take it to the side seam, I wanted to show you this picture because I top stitched it right at the princess seam. So to just hold that front facing in place. And so you can look at this picture and see, just do a nice little top stitch and it holds the seam. Press it first so that you can get that seam turned under just a little bit, and then you can just top stitch that. All right, then when it comes to the sleeve, the bottom ruffle I just did right sides together and I sewed the bottom ruffle right to the bottom, and then I went up and I flipped the ruffle up, stitched it in place, and then let it go down. So if you peek underneath here, that's where I sewed it. I just flipped it up. There's a zillion ways you could connect all of it, but you want to have sleeve underneath the first ruffle. The second ruffle is attached to the bottom. So when you are shortening your sleeve, you want to take into consideration, remember I started here by 3/4 length, but then I took away the width of the ruffle so that the entire length would be 3/4. So if I took this away, you can see there's only one ruffle at the bottom. Then I added the second one here to the top. And how you attach that doesn't make any difference. I did all of this when the sleeve was flat. Then I set the sleeve in just like you would a normal set-in sleeve in our directions. And then I did the side seam and the underarm seams and put my ties in place and did all of that. Just fun, just really fun. The top, it literally feels like I have nothing on. It's so comfortable and it's perfect for spring. The florals, the cottons, everything's perfect for spring. So the goal is to have happy sewing. Thanks for watching.